broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon for those of you not joining us here on the West Coast. My name is Basil, and I'm a marketing associate here at Volunteer Match. I want to welcome you to our Insight series on design thinking and how it can help increase impact and innovation at your organization. We've got a great speaker today and some really good tips queued up. But before we get started, I did just want to go over a few housekeeping notes. First of all of you are on an automatic mute this morning, so you don't need to worry about any background noise on your part. Just because we can't hear your voice doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. You should see a GoToWebinar toolbar in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Once you open that up, you should see the word questions with either a plus sign or an arrow sign next to it, and that's your questions tool. Please feel free to type in your questions as we go through today's webinar, and we'll start answering them towards the end. I'm also going to be live tweeting today, so if you're on Twitter and would like to ask a question there or join in the conversation, you can do so by using the hashtag VMLearn, as in Volunteer Match Learn. All right, let's get started. For those of you not familiar with our service, Volunteer Match believes that everyone should have the chance to make a difference. As the West's largest volunteer engagement network, serving over 100,000 participating nonprofits and 13 million annual visitors, we offer solutions for individuals, nonprofits, and companies to make our belief a reality. Since our launch in 1998, Volunteer Match has helped the social sector attract more than $6.8 billion worth of volunteer services. If you're new to the field of volunteer management or looking to expand your knowledge, our Learning Center offers over 20 webinar topics focused on the field, serving an audience of over 8,000 attendees each year. Okay, so without further ado, please join me in welcoming today's speaker, Ryall Carroll. Good morning, Ryall.
Hi, everybody.
Do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and get us started?
Sure. I'm actually going to start off by telling everybody the last decade or so, I was, before I started Razor, I was actually a college professor of marketing. And so I'm used to presenting in front of like a live group of people where I can tell if people are on their phones, if they're falling asleep. And so I'm kind of flying blind today because I'm just staring at a screen. But I'm going to do my best to keep everybody interested and engaged. And please, if you have any questions, feel free. I know we're going to have a Q&A at the end of this. And there's also going to be some resources for you about the information that I'm delivering today. And so, like I said, as a college professor, I actually a couple of years ago attended a Google for Education conference. And the reason I went to this conference was it was really about how do I learn to use technology to engage our students further? How do I interact with them in a way that is using technology in a useful way in the classroom? And one of the seminars that I took there was this design thinking. And I didn't know anything about design thinking. I showed up to the seminar, and they put us in a group with 5 other people, and they gave us the task of design a new and modern locker for this generation. And much like you're probably thinking now, what does designing a locker have to do with my nonprofit or my organization? I was feeling the same way. What does designing a locker have to do with technology in the classroom? But hopefully you'll play along like I played along. And we did was we spent the next hour really kind of going over our past experiences, trying to understand what we would do. They actually gave us a locker that we could go and look at and play around with. And after an hour, our group presented to other groups. And we presented our locker. And what we realized pretty early on after a couple of presentations was everybody's locker somewhat looked the same. Yeah, there was little shapes and sizes that might have been different, some bells and whistles, but for the most part, each group's locker kind of looked the same, and they looked kind of like the current locker that you'd see in the high school across America. So our next task was actually brought high school students in, and we had to interview these high school students about what it's like, their issues on a day-to-day basis, whether it be dealing with social media, dealing with their classes, trying to get into college, how are they going to pay for college, all these burdens and things that they were dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And after that, I was really enlightened, and man, I felt like lucky to have gone to school back in the day when technology wasn't so such a part of the day-to-day life. The next task that they gave us was they actually gave us a backpack full of books, computers, and they also gave us a locker and a schedule. And they said, you got to show up on time to all of these different classes and make sure you have the appropriate material for that class. So we went on our way, and we tried leaving as much as we could in the locker because when we got to the classrooms, they actually weighed each backpack. And the team that ended up at the end of the day carrying the least amount actually ended up winning. And so you had to do some strategy and really try to figure out what you could take and what you could make sure you get back to your locker for and stuff. So then when we were done with that, they actually had us go back and do this first task that we were asked to do. And that was design a locker for this generation. And now we looked at this problem in a much different way. We looked at it from the eyes of the end user. We were actually able to kind of walk a mile in their shoes, as they say, gain empathy, and what we designed was completely different. We actually designed basically a movable chair, something that had storage in the back, it had outlets and plugs, and it allowed you to go from class to class, and at night these chairs would be plugged in, and it totally revamped what a school would look like. And no longer do you need lockers in the hallway. No longer do classrooms have chairs when you first walk in. Everybody was bringing their own chair. And so this was really insightful for us because just by gaining some empathy from talking to the end user, from understanding a little more about their day-to-day, about their problems, we were able to design something completely different. And what I thought was impactful about this is really when you think back on how you make decisions on a day-to-day basis, how I probably make a lot of decisions on a day-to-day basis for my organization, it's hardly ever really thinking about the end user in a way that you really understand their problems and their issues. And so that's what we're going to kind of focus on today with the design thinking is how do you gain insight into the end user, the person you're developing something for, whether in some of your organizations, whether it's donors or volunteers, how do you kind of walk a mile in their shoes? And so we're doing that through the lens of design thinking. Design thinking was actually the big place that does a lot of the work in design thinking is the Institute of Design at Stanford. And if you, at the end of this deck, there's actually a link to Stanford's website. It's a great resource. They have a lot of free material. And if anybody is interested in pursuing this after this webinar, feel free to go in and look at that material. Now, design thinking has kind of 5 categories in this process. First one is empathy. So again, kind of walking a mile in the shoes of a person, defining the problem, really understanding what it is you're trying to solve. Ideation, where you're kind of brainstorming. So what are all the outside of the box things that we can think of that might help solve these problems? So whether they're wacky or not, let's just put them all up on a wall and then let's cull them down and create a prototype. So that's the next stage, is creating a prototype. And then the last one is actually testing it, getting it into the hands of the user. And I don't want anybody to think this is a linear process. This process can jump from spot to spot. You could be in the middle of your prototyping and realizing that maybe we need to go back and redefine the problem. We didn't do a good enough job. Or maybe we need to go back and really talk to the customer more and really get better insight into what it is that they need. And so this isn't a linear process, but again, what we're going to focus on today is the empathy part of design thinking. For anybody who, after this webinar, gets really excited about empathy and wants to do more within your organization, this is a great book. It's called Value Proposition Design. Within it, they give a lot of ways for you to develop empathy, for you to think about empathy. So I think if you're excited about empathy and want to learn more and how to use it, it is another great resource. And again, there's a link to this at the end. So the goals for the webinar are really to show off and showcase the power of empathy, so you see how important that can be in designing offerings for your organization. I'm going to give some case studies or some examples of organizations that I think are doing a really good job at this. Hopefully that sparks some ideas for your organization, whether it be your volunteers or your donors, how you can really understand the end user a little better and maybe offer something that's going to benefit both your end user but also you as an organization. And then get inspired. Let's try to make some change. Let's do some good work out there and move the organizations farther along towards your goals. So the first organization I'm going to talk about is the American Red Cross. Now, as many of you probably know, one of the big things the American Red Cross does is through their blood drives. They try to collect as much blood as possible for the uses within medical and emergencies and all sorts of great places that the blood is needed. And so what they found early on is this idea of social recognition. How can we get the donors to be able to show off their altruistic behavior of blood donation? And in fact, in a study in 2008, they found that simply a sticker, "Be nice to me because I gave blood today," was impactful enough that it actually increased blood donations. So just being able to put a sticker on you and people you walk into that day after you gave blood, that actually had an impact on people wanting to donate on a more regular basis. How do you modernize that? Well, they looked up, they have a partner with Foursquare. And for those of you who don't know what Foursquare is a geo location app. And so now they partnered for this generation where you go into a blood drive and you donate blood. You can go on your Foursquare and log in, and now you can get a badge, an American Red Cross badge, saying that you donated blood. Now they've amplified this social recognition. Now it's no longer just the people you walk into or see on a day-to-day basis, but people within your social network will now understand how altruistic you are about giving, that you donate blood. The next organization is Grid Alternative. Grid Alternative installs solar panels on low and fixed income houses, and they work in communities that are economically challenged. And so one of the things that they struggle with, which I imagine some of your organizations might struggle with, is how do we get reliable volunteers? And so they tapped into their own area of expertise. And what they've done is thought about the end user, so the volunteer. What is it? What's going to be in it for them? And so they created a certificate program where you do a certain amount of hours of volunteerism with Grid Alternative. You go to some of they have special classes designed for this. You can actually get a certificate, and they help you then get a job within the solar industry, which is a really high-paying job. They also have connections with a lot of the companies who might be looking for potential employees. So this is, again, understanding what's in it for the end user and allowing the organization to really meet their goals of having educated and responsible and reliable volunteers. The next one is FDU Cancer. Now, FDU Cancer, their mission and goal is to educate the younger generation about cancer prevention and have them understand how to raise awareness and do testing. And so through them, they understand their end target audience for their messaging isn't what the typical, older generation where you have $1,000 a plate dinner or they're doing different events. This generation is more about social media, the social sharing, and looking at cool designs and things like that. And so what they've done is they've actually created concerts for people to go. And so the price of admission is one of their T-shirts. And now they have a captive audience who is their end user, their target for this education, and they're sharing this on social media. They're taking pictures while they're at this concert, and they're sharing that, getting the message out even more. The last one I'm going to talk about is BuildOn. BuildOn's mission is to alleviate poverty and illiteracy through education. One of the ways that they do this is through building schools in developing countries. So one of the things that they struggle with, like a lot of organizations that are international, is how do you raise money from donors, maybe here in North America, for a cause that is abroad? How do you allow people to see what their money is going to? How do you allow them to engage and interact with the people who are going to end up prospering from your donation? And so what they end up doing is they created a TREC program. And now with this TREC program, you donate a certain amount of money or you raise a certain amount of money, you then get the opportunity to go on this TREC and help dig the foundation of that school that you are helping to build through your donation. So now you have these people who are going to go for a week, dig a hole, which this isn't skilled labor, so this isn't going to have any issues with the integrity of the building, the school that they're building. And so these people are going to be able to go over, gain like this once-in-a-lifetime experience and really understand the issues with poverty, get this experience, this hands-on way to build this school and see their dollars that they're donating firsthand. Now, the reason I know a lot about the BuildOn cause was their founder, Jim Zelkowski, he actually came to St. John's while I was teaching there and delivered this message, and it was really an impactful organization, and the students were really excited about the possibility of going on TREC and raising money for BuildOn. And so they reached out to me and said, we would love for you to be our faculty advisor. I was so excited about what BuildOn was doing that I also wanted to raise money for them. And so we set out to raise money so we could help build this school in a developing country. And we started going through, and quickly I realized, much like the high school locker, not much has evolved in terms of some of this fundraising. What the students were doing to raise this money for their TREC was a car wash. It was bake sales. It was selling coffee or candy bars. And so that kind of struck me. And the other thing that I found interesting was these students would come to me and they say, I'm really passionate about education. I'm passionate about the mission of BuildOn, but unfortunately I can't tutor because I don't have enough time. I'm busy fundraising. I'm spending all this time fundraising, and I'm not making the impact that I'd like to make in the local community. And I thought to myself, that just doesn't make sense. I wouldn't want, I'd much rather my son go out and volunteer and tutor in the local community than spend time baking cookies so they could sit in front of a table for 8 hours and sell those cookies. And so that's when the light bulb kind of went off. And I thought, maybe there's a way that we could combine these two things. What if we could fundraise while we're also making an impact by volunteering in the local community? People raise money for 5Ks, for marathons, for bike rides all the time. I think people would donate to our volunteerism. And now, not only are we making an impact in the local community, but we're raising money for a cause, a worthy cause, and a great organization. So that's what we did. the students and I, we committed to doing a certain amount of hours of service. I committed to doing 100 hours of service over a 4-month time period. I volunteered in soup kitchens. I volunteered tutoring. And in fact, my wife's son and I have made it an annual tradition where we deliver Thanksgiving meals on Thanksgiving Day to people who can't get out of the house, who don't have a family. And so it was really impactful. And we raised a lot of money. People were willing to sponsor us $1 or $2 an hour, and that money then went on to BuildOn. So not only did we make an impact in the local community, we were able to raise money for a great cause. And so that's why my partner Joel and I created Reserve. It's a platform where people can volunteer and raise money for the causes they're passionate about. Whether it's raising money like we did for BuildOn, where we worked in the local community and the money went to an international cause, or it could be they're volunteering within your organization and raising money for your organization. And so taking advantage of volunteers that are already within the organization. We just went through in this fall, we launched with BuildOn, and with a couple of their high school and one of their college chapters. We had 135 volunteers. They actually end up doing over 5,500 hours of service in the local community. They got over 700 sponsors, and they raised over $125,000 for BuildOn. So not only do we have this huge impact in the local community by having them do all of these hours of service, we're also able to raise money for a great cause with BuildOn. Now, bringing kind of full circle, we built Razor with kind of a design thinking approach where I walk in my own shoes of someone trying to raise money for an organization and built the platform based off of that. But one of the things that through this experience of working with BuildOn and some of these high school and college students, we realized, much like American Red Cross, these kids are doing their own form of social recognition. They're going out and volunteering in the local community and then posting it socially. They're posting the fact they're working with the Special Olympics. They're posting that they're working with Habitat Humanity. And they're posting this on social media, raising awareness of their own good deed, but also of the organization and the cause that they're raising money for. So as a result, we've gone back and we're actually adding a feature to this platform where it's a volunteer journey. So every time someone records their hours on our platform, it also creates this journey so people can come back and see all the volunteerism they've done while they were raising this money. And it also, we're making it so it's very social sharing, with the social sharing in mind. And this way, again, the organization's message is getting out there, and we're making it very user-friendly for the people who are going to be using it, these student volunteers. So we worked with BuildOn, and so as a result, we've actually gone out and the feedback has been overwhelming and overwhelmingly positive, and we're starting to work with, these are all some of our charity partners that we're starting to work with. And so ranges from American Diabetes, Sloan Kettering Foundation, Veterinarians International. And so these are all amazing causes that we're so excited about being able to work with and raise money for. And so we're also excited about what Volunteer Match is doing and Volunteer Match's mission. And so as a result, any organization that signs up for Reserve through Volunteer Match, we're actually going to give a portion of their proceeds back to Volunteer Match, because without Volunteer Match, I know a lot of organizations wouldn't be able to get their message out. We wouldn't be able to get the volunteers they need. And so we want to help promote volunteerism. We think you can make a bigger impact through volunteerism and raising money. So we want to make sure that we're giving back to Volunteer Match. And so we're going to be giving a portion of our platform fee to Volunteer Match for any organization that signs up. And so I think that's about it for my talk. And so I'd like to open this up for questions. And so, Basil, if you want to take over, if there's any questions.
All right. Yeah, great info, Ryall. Thank you so much for that. We do have a couple of minutes left today for questions, so now's your time to get those in before the end of the webinar. One of our listeners asked, you mentioned that empathy is a big component of design thinking. What are some examples of questions a nonprofit can ask their volunteers to better design services?
You cut out at the end there. I'm sorry, but I think the question is, what are some questions organizations can ask in order to gain more empathy? And I think the answer to that is whatever you're asking your volunteers to do or your donors to do, try walking a mile in their shoes. Try actually doing the fundraising. Try actually working at the soup kitchen, interacting with them. Just kind of, it might be through a survey, might be through a focus group, but I think I learned a lot more through actually sitting side by side with a volunteer, interacting with them, with our users on Razor, trying to understand what they're trying to accomplish, what is important to them, and why is this cause important to them, and then seeing if there's some way maybe you can amplify that.
But if we do have time for one more question, one of our listeners does ask something a little more related to the RayServe platform. And she asks, does RayServe integrate with company volunteer hour matching programs?
Oh, so I guess the question is, so if a company matches through dollars for hours, things like that, are we able to integrate? At this point, we're not able to integrate with dollars for hours if that's what the company is using, but we're hopefully going to be working on a way that we can integrate in the future with dollars for hours and other company-wide programs, whether it's matching dollars or anything that is related to someone's passionate cause that they want to give back.
Great. Thanks again, Ryall. And we're just coming up to the top of the hour. So thanks again to everyone for joining us today. We have some great resources on the slide, including our Engaging Volunteers blog for volunteer managers. The slides from today's webinar will be sent out to you a little later today, and a video of the presentation will be posted on our YouTube channel. If your question did not get answered, please feel free to reach out to Ryall directly. His email is ryall@rayserve.org. Special thank you to Ryall for today's insights. I hope all of you enjoyed today's webinar. And thanks again, everyone. Looking forward to seeing you on a future webinar. Bye-bye.
Thanks again.